we would like to move on to our invited speakers. And the first one we have on the list is Anna. Anna, are you with us and ready to go?
Hi, Mike. Yes, I am here. Hopefully everyone can
Splendid.
hear me. And I am ready to go. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Hopefully you should all be able to see my screen now.
Yeah.
Yes, we can
Marvelous. That's good news. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks so much to Edward and Mike for inviting me tonight. I'm Anna, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a challenge that I completed this summer, which was to see a different butterfly species in each of London's 33 boroughs. So just to summarise what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to let you know a little bit more about me, talk a bit about the inspiration for the challenge, how I came up with the idea, some of the planning and approach that went into the challenge. I'm going to do a bit of a focus on the BC, Cambridgeshire and Essex boroughs, and a few other little highlights, and then a quick little summary at the end. So apologies if I talk too fast. I've got lots to try and squeeze in. So who am I? I'm a nature reserves officer. I work for London Wildlife Trust at the moment on the Brilliant Butterflies project, which is a partnership project between London Wildlife Trust, the Natural History Museum and Butterfly Conservation. And we are creating and restoring chalk grass and habitats across Croydon and Bromley. So it's been a 2-year project, which officially ended in August, but thanks to COVID, we've pushed on for a bit longer. So we're still working in those areas. And it means I've spent a large amount of time in the last 2 years on some incredibly butterfly-rich nature reserves, including Hutchinson's Bank, which is in New Addington, and got a nationally important site for the small blue butterflies, amongst others. I've also listed on the bottom there that I'm a newcomer, because as of about 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't know anything about butterflies. I could maybe identify 2 or 3. And I started on a transect training in my local area in Streatham, and then kind of built up from there, managed to persuade London Wildlife Trust to give me a job. And so I am a relative newcomer to the area, and it was a big part of this challenge was to try and inspire other people to start their own butterfly spotting journey, whatever their experience was. So they're not coming at it from all kinds of experience, like whether they knew lots or little to start with. So the inspiration for the challenge, where it came from, coming out of lockdown early last year, I think is a fairly accurate representation of me at that time, feeling like kind of coming out of hibernation, but not really having much motivation to do anything, and needing a challenge to kind of get me out and give me purpose again. So I was reflecting on a talk that was given by Simon Saville, who's the chair of butterfly conservation in Surrey and southwest London, and he'd done a talk during lockdown about the sort of success of London's butterflies, that although butterflies are declining nationally, those in London, some species are actually doing quite well. The distribution and species numbers have increased in recent years. And so I started kind of musing about that and was exploring through this book, which came out in the 1980s, a widespread study of the butterfly species of London. And at that point in time, they were listing 22 breeding species within the inner London boroughs. So I started wondering like how much that had changed. I knew that there was kind of upwards of 30 species in some urban parks within central London, and kind of coupling that up with Patrick Barkham's The Butterfly Isles, where he has a quest to try and see all 59 species of British butterfly in one summer. And so that's where the inspiration for trying to find 33 butterflies across the capital came from. So this is the area I was dealing with. These are the 33 boroughs of London. Although there is the slight anomaly, which I've highlighted in red here. This is the City of London, which isn't technically a borough, but is sometimes called a borough. But I included it in the challenge as a borough, mostly because 33 made a much nicer butterfly shape for my logo than 32 would have done. So I thought I'll include that in there as well. So this is the pink line represents the inner London boroughs, so those 12 boroughs that make up inner London, where there was those 22 species resident during the 1980s. And this yellow line represents the 5 boroughs that are covered by BC, Cambridgeshire and Essex. I should say that before starting this challenge, I had no idea that there was 33 boroughs in London. I hadn't heard of a lot of the boroughs. And so I thought when I started, even if I didn't complete the butterfly part of the challenge, at least I would have upskilled my geography knowledge of London, and I would have visited them all. So just to give an idea of scale, it's about 45 miles across from the edge of Hillingdon across to Havering, so it's quite a wide area to be dealing with. And I was planning to do all of this in my spare time, so it wasn't as part of my job, unfortunately. It was just a hobby. So I spent quite a bit of researching, looking at Transect data and iRecord records and historical records, and trying to map out where species could be found in all the different boroughs, and then kind of zoomed in on areas that were along border lines so that I could try and visit 2 or 3 boroughs in one visit by focusing on those green spaces that were in the boroughs. So after sort of mapping all this out in sort of end of February, early March, and then by mid-March I was feeling positive. I'd got this massive spreadsheet of information, and I was ready to go. And if you can cast your minds back to late March, we had some beautiful weather. It was glorious sunshine. It was 23, 24 degrees. And I was so buoyed up by this. I thought, yeah, this is going to be the best butterfly summer ever. The challenge is going to be, you know, a real breeze. And then came April, which, if you'll remember, it was the coldest since 1922. So I started to get a little bit nervous about the challenge, but I figured that it's only the first month of the butterfly season. After the Beast from the East a few years ago, we had a really good butterfly summer, so it's fine. It's only 1 month, and everything will change. I'm sure May will be better. And then came May, which was the wettest since records began, as I'm sure you'll remember, and as it has already been mentioned tonight about the weird weather that we've had this year. So by this point, I was starting to question why I had decided to embark on this challenge and why I'd told everybody that I was going to do it. But there was some windows of opportunity, and actually my first really good butterfly day of the year was in one of the BC, Cambridgeshire, Essex boroughs, and that was in Barking and Dagenham and Havering. So after a post on Twitter from the Dagenham Rangers, who sent me this map, which is on the right hand side here. It's a bit small for you to see, but it's easily accessible online. It's a really great map that kind of shows the scale of the green spaces that are across Barking and Dagenham and into Havering across the Dagenham corridor. So it's in early May, I spent a really wonderful day walking around there. So emerging from the train station, you can't quite believe that there's going to be all this green space. It looks like the extremes of urban environment with, you know, sort of train stations, but it's a mixture of woodland, wetland, acid grassland, and this is all in a place that was sand and gravel extraction pits, along with being a dumping ground for rubble after the Second World War. So it's really kind of risen from the rubble, as it were, to be transformed into a green space. And I would really encourage anyone who's close by to have a look round in this area. I walked for about 9 miles during the day, with very rarely leaving green space except to cross railway tracks, and saw 9 species within that time, which for that sort of time in the year was a really good count. The green veined whites seen pairing here were in East Brookend Park, and they became my eventual tick in the box for Barking and Dagenham. And the orange tip, that herald of spring that was mentioned earlier, became the tick for Havering. And so it was a really wonderful kind of start that turned around that wet May weather. Next on the list was this wonderful cemetery, the City of London Cemetery, which is in Newham. And starting this challenge, I've got a renewed love for cemeteries. There's such great urban green spaces, particularly within London. And the City of London Cemetery was definitely one of my favourites. At 200 acres, its sheer size is mind-blowing. And on the one hand, that can be seen as extremely sad. It's, you know, that represents a lot of death, but actually having spent a lot of time in cemeteries this summer, I've grown to see them in a new light and see that how much love and life is represented in the cemeteries, and that's alongside all of the wildlife. In the City of London Cemetery, there's swathes of these wildflower meadows, particularly within the areas that have the oldest graves on the site. And they're just home to so many butterfly species. I saw 7 species just within this one cemetery, along with lots of the day-flying moths at that time of year, and also the dragonflies. So it really was a buzz with wildlife, as well as all the sort of birds and mammal species that were there as well. And the small copper that's on the bottom left corner here became my tick for Newham. But another highlight of the day was this. I think it was the first painted lady that I'd seen within this area. So I'm hoping this is going to play you a little video. I got quite into doing slow-mo videos of butterflies during the summer. It really helped to be able to see the differences in their flight patterns. So I'm hoping this is going to play for me. Right, take a second or two. And you see a circle swinging round. Oh, my internet might not have enough juice to play it for you. I'll give it a second. The classics of, technology not on my side. Oh, there we go. Just taking its time. So all the videos and photos on here are they're all taken on my iPhone. So I didn't have any specialist equipment or anything. So yeah, it's just all phone pictures and videos. Next door neighbour to Newham, to the City of London Cemetery, is Wanstead Flats, which has already been mentioned this evening as for getting grazing, which is very exciting to hear that they're going to be getting grazing in the future. It was another new site for me. I hadn't been there before. If you can see here on this map where Wanstead Flats is written, where the word flats is more or less written over Newham Cemetery. So they're sort of side by side. So it was one of those double boroughs that I did within the same day. So on Wanstead Flats is the most southern area of Epping Forest, but most of the trees have been cleared, and it's like large areas of grassland now, and it's a home to a very successful breeding population of skylarks. They've put a lot of effort into conserving the population. I believe it's the best population within London at the moment. And within the day there, I saw 7 species. So I saw 7 in Redbridge, 7 in Newham, and 3 of them were different species. So actually 10 across this like relatively small border area, 10 different species. And one of my favourites, another species that's already been mentioned this evening, this little wing wiggler here on the right, in the right hand side, the green hair streak. It's has been mentioned, it's classically a May species, and by the end of May I was getting worried that I wasn't going to be able to actually see any green hair streaks because of the wet weather. I haven't seen any. But thankfully in early June, they seem to burst into life, and I saw more this year than I've ever seen before in London. So it seemed to be a great year for them. And that's just a mother Shipton moth on the bottom there. So lots of those present on Wanstead Flats as well. Going to set that going already because it's in case it takes its time. The last borough that I'm just going to pause that for a second. The last borough of the BC, Cambridgeshire and Essex boroughs was Waltham Forest, and it was heading towards the very end of the challenge, where I wasn't really sure whether I was going to be able to complete it. It was the very damp, dark bank holiday August weekend, but nevertheless I'd ventured out to try and see what I could find. And actually three of the hibernating species, the comma, small tortoiseshell and red admiral, were braving the temperatures on that day, and also the steadfast meadow browns, which can always be relied upon even on these damp days. And that's another thing about this. The challenge was that it's often sort of the mantra of the summer, it's just another meadow brown, and another meadow brown, or another white, another small white. And through this challenge, I really came to value all the butterflies. I was so excited to see all of them, because the more I saw, the more likely I thought that it would be that I'd be able to complete the challenge in the end. So, and this interaction with meadow browns in this little slow-mo video was my favorite, I think, of the summer. So if you keep your eyes on the top of the screen, you'll see hopefully see an incoming visitor.
Wow.
Inelegant, but quite lovely to see the meadow browns interaction. That was purely by chance. I was just kind of filming just with my phone, filming the one that happened to be feeding, and then unbeknownst to me, incoming came from the background. So it was a really nice interaction.
Lovely.
And I haven't got time to talk about all of the butterflies that I saw, but this is just a few other highlights from this summer. This purple emperor here, who's feeding on the ground, was on Putney Heath in Wandsworth. I was nose to nose with him for about 10 or 15 minutes while he was feeding on the ground. It was quite the magical encounter, and quite I hadn't expected that. I thought if I was going to get a purple emperor, I might just get a quick glimpse, but it was, so that was a definite highlight. On the right hand side, we've got a white admiral here, which I hadn't seen in London before, and that was in Ruislip Woods, which is in a really wonderful huge expanse of ancient woodland, which was abundant with butterflies. And the white admiral, this very tropical looking butterfly, particularly in flight, is resident there. So that was a really wonderful one to see. Perching on my finger here on the bottom was a very obliging Adonis blue, at Big Inn Hill, which is in Bromley. It was my first encounter with Adonis blues, and I couldn't get enough of that turquoise. It's like a dawn breaking when they open their wings. It was really amazing. And then the final one at the top there, the golden wonder, that was the very final butterfly that I got on my list, and it was a do or die situation. If I hadn't seen a brown hair streak, then I wouldn't have been able to complete the challenge. But thankfully, in Kingston, Tolworth Court Farm, I was able to catch sight of one. And then very randomly, I was walking home on the next day past Tooting Common, which is just near where I live, and the picture, the one that's pictured here, landed right next to me on a blackthorn bush just next to the road. So it was a double whammy for the brown hair streaks that week. But they've had a very good year in southwest London in particular. There's been a lot more sightings than usual, which is really great. So just a quick little summary of the challenge in total. I ended up seeing 38 species across the city, and 27 of those were in inner London boroughs, which is a count up of 5 from those 22 that were seen during the 80s. I visited over 60 green spaces. Many of them were new to me. I wrote a successful blog, which was visited by lots of people. And I had to say a huge thank you to the butterfly community. What a wonderful community the butterfly community is, because people were so helpful. I had so many tips and hints, and people contacting me on Twitter, and people who didn't mind when I stalked them, when I messaged them to say, I see you've seen this, where was it? Like, can you send me a pin? I really got invested in it, and people were so supportive. So it was just, that was so wonderful. And then just the final point there about motivation follows action is one of my kind of favorite mantras. That there were days when I really, especially during the dark weather, and where I really didn't feel like getting out and looking for butterflies, and I always felt so much better once I had. And it's sort of simple translation of do something and you'll want to do it more, and that was definitely this challenge. It became an obsession, most definitely, and that's all 33 that made the cut. That's just my blog at the bottom there if anyone's interested in reading any more about particular sites that I visited, 33butterflies.blog, and there's more of my pictures and anecdotes on Twitter as well, so that's my Twitter handle. And thank you all very much for listening to me this evening.
Thank you, Anna, that was lovely.
Can I ask a question before you go?
Absolutely, yeah.
Anna, that on Twitter we had a brief exchange because you saw a brown hair streak in Enfield at Whiteledge Park. Are you still confident it was a brown hair streak? Because clearly you know what they look like, and because
I do what they look like, but I felt like I was seeing them in my sleep. At that point in time, I was like, that's what I was looking for, the brown hair streak. And then when I saw what I am still pretty sure, but now because I didn't get a photo of it and there was nobody else there, like the more I thought about it, I was like, maybe it wasn't. And because I was so, but I know what they look like, but because there wasn't anyone there, so I know that that they mentioned kind of doing egg hunts, and so yeah, I really hope that that's the case. Because when I was looking at a historical sort of records, there are some brown hair streak records from that area, like way back. I think I can't remember when it was, but it may have been somewhat one passing through, and I can't 100% say for sure, because the more I thought about it, the more I questioned it then, because it was so new. But so I really hope it was, and I hope that the eggs are found, and then I can breathe a real sigh of relief and be like, it was one. But it was, I hope I wasn't seeing things.
No, in a sense, it's hard to mistake brown hair streak for another species, isn't it? I think so. I'm confident you saw it, because the reason we're sort of excited is only 3 miles from the Essex border, that place. And
that's
so
it.
They're getting very close now back to coming within our branch area. Definitely,
and I think this year was such a great year for them. They were seen in so many new areas this year around in and around London, where they hadn't been spotted before, which is a definitely it's obviously a really good sign. But so I hope that that's their new, one of their new spots. White Webb's Wood is a beautiful site, and all that area around there. It was it was a lovely place to be.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it is. I hadn't been there until you thought. I went down there about 2 days later, and it was really grey and chilly. And I went to the exact spot that you saw, because you gave me the spot by that RSPB site.
Yeah.
And it does look like perfect habitat. So
that's it. It is.
Yeah, that's right. But I sadly didn't see one there. But no, I'm very confident you did see one. So that's fantastic.
Great. Yeah, superb. Was there any other questions? Or?
Oh yeah, Anna. It looks like you've made some really useful sightings. So just encouragement to pass any records on if you haven't already.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been ploughing through and putting as many as I can on iRecord. So I've got, as I said about my mega spreadsheet, so I've been going through and trying to put as many on as well that I didn't do at the time, and tick them off as I go through and put them up there. So yeah.
Lovely. Thank you.
No probs.
Well, thank you very much, Erin. I mean, this is a wonderful message to say, if you want to look for butterflies, go to London. It's obviously the place to be.